Pete Lee. Thank you so much for joining me, brother.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. It's so good to have you here.
Such an honor.
The honor is all mine. So just as a brief background, Pete, you and I met at YogaWorks, South Bay.
Yes.
So your class was right after mine.
Saturdays.
Yeah. And our ships would cross in the night. Well, more in the mornings, after early afternoons. But you would always be running in carrying your big gong. Yeah. And it was right after my class, and the room was super sweaty, and you run in because you're coming from the east side of town all the way over to the west side, and so you'd already be sweating. And you know what I loved about that time is that you always had a huge smile on your face, kind of like you do now. I've always honored our friendship. You and I have co-led a couple of teacher trainings now.
Yes.
And I think you're a great human, and so the honor is all mine having you here. What I would like to ask you is, first of all, can you give me a brief background on who you are leading up to this moment?
Wow. That's a big question.
The super cliff noted version.
Okay, so I'm Pete Lee. I'm born and raised in LA. And you're an LA native as well, yeah?
That's right.
Yeah. So let's see. I've been a coach, teacher, writer for many years. I feel like my life took many detours. Yeah. I started teaching in 2010. I did my teacher training in 2009 in Kundalini Yoga. And I was working at the desk at the YogaWorks in Larchmont, which then opened up just, I don't know, so much. It's being around community, really. But it opened up a lot because there was really no Kundalini in the YogaWorks world. At the time, there was Kia Miller and Ame Donahue, who were teaching Kundalini at South Bay, and then Kia was teaching in Santa Monica. And then I became kind of one of the few default subs. But then I remember it was like 2010. I think it was just like, I'm fresh out of teacher training, right? And, like teaching in little studios, and all of a sudden it's like teaching at YogaWorks Main Street for Kia. And I think the first time I was like, oh my God, I'm like, oh my God, there's like 40 people in the room or 60 or something. And I'm like, I'm used to like 3. And then I'm like, oh God. But then I was like, oh, I could do this, and it was great. Everyone's great. And so that grew to me teaching at Main Street on Fridays. And then me teaching at the YogaWorks South Bay on the days that Ame wasn't teaching. So then Kundalini grew kind of from the few of us, I feel like, that were teaching it, Yeah. And I feel like I taught it in a very different way too from everyone else, because I feel like I do a lot of healing work. And then I think also with the coaching background, I tend to lean towards healing. So everything kind of comes from this place of all this work that we're doing is for the sake of healing. So, and then one huge thing that I did when we were at YogaWorks was the restorative teacher training that was led by Jillian Pransky, and who remains for me is one of my favorite teachers. I learned so much from her. But so much about just how, it wasn't just about the practice. It was like how we move and breathe. It's like all the behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah.
That I was like, wow, I never learned this in my own training. And that informed everything. So I feel like I brought this whole restorative element to everything I did. And then it was like, it's funny teaching with Ame and all those other Lynn, James, all these other teachers that taught at South Bay. We would do workshops together, And then even Lynn, we would teach like a workshop, and she would say, I'm the bad cop and Pete's the good cop.
I think that's how it was in our teacher training too, Pete. I think you were definitely the good cop. I'm pretty sure I was the bad cop.
I was always like the yin, right, to your yang.
Yeah. Well, I practiced with Ame a couple of times down there, and her Kundalini was not restorative.
Oh, yeah.
No, it was like some butt kicking Kundalini.
Oh, yeah.
It was tough, man.
Oh, yeah.
So I always found it very interesting how when we gather tools like that, like how you did the restorative with Jillian, and it totally transformed your style of teaching.
Yep.
I love that happens.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
Because I'm very similar to you, as in I kind of just stumbled into Yoga Works. I always saw Yoga Works. It was always there, and I just it seemed like the big leagues.
Yeah.
And I was still in the minors. And because I never, when I first stumbled into Yoga Works, I didn't train with Yoga Works.
Yeah.
I got into Yoga Works through my practice of Ashtanga. And Sonia, my teacher at the time, asked me to sub for her. And then when I went into the office to sign the paperwork to sub for her, the manager, her name was Joy, said, "Is there any other classes you want to teach?" I'm like, "Can I?" She's like, "Yeah, whatever you want." I'm like, "Okay, great. I'll teach Vinyasa Flow, 2-3, 2." Yeah. She's like, "What else? What about Iyengar?" I'm like, "No, maybe not Iyengar." And so then I started teaching for Yoga Works, and then it came to light that I wasn't teacher trained with Yoga Works. So then they came to me and said, "We can't have you," because I was subbing for like Calvin and Sarah Ezrin and Jesse Shine and basically all the Ashtangis that had Vinyasa Flow classes. I was subbing for them. Yeah. So Main Street, Montana, Westwood, I started subbing all these classes. And Jess Smith from the corporate office called me, and she's like, "We can't have you do that anymore. You're not Yoga Works trained." She goes, "You can continue teaching Ashtanga for Sonia, but we can't have you teaching any of the other classes. But if you're interested, we'd like to give you a teacher training. If you want to teach these other classes, you just have to finish the 200 hour. We won't make you do the 500. Wow. And then you can teach these classes." So I jumped on it. And then there I was. I did the 200 hour with Jesse Shine and David Kim. And then all of a sudden I was teaching for everybody all over the place. And I got South Bay classes. That Saturday South Bay class was my first class on the Yoga Works schedule. Then I got 2 in Westwood from Calvin. Then I got 2 more in the South Bay from David Lynch. And then I got that Sunday morning. I forget who had it before me. But then I got the Sunday, so then I had the full schedule. But I digress. How everything that we encounter really affects our practice and how we teach. Yeah. And which leads me to ask you, because this is all about how yoga, we move yoga off of our mats and into our lives. Yeah. And it was actually your life, because I know you and I know like where you, how you got to yoga, but I would love to hear you explain how you got to your practice, because I know it was your family and I know it was life itself pushing you towards your practice, which then ultimately I think transformed like everything. Yeah,
totally.
So would you tell us how that happened?
Yeah. So I discovered yoga, I think, let's see, Kundalini was where my heart lied, because that was the first big practice. The 2 yoga classes I remember doing that were more hatha based were, I liked it, but it didn't hit me the way that the Kundalini experience did. My first yoga class was at the Center for Yoga before it became Yoga Works Larchmont. And I was with a teacher named Susan Swan, really sweet. The funny thing about that was she taught in the room that I ended up teaching in.
Oh, cool.
And the second class I took was in Pasadena at Yoga House. wonderful studio. And so that was my intro to yoga, were these kind of these 2 level 1 type classes. And I was like, oh, I liked them. I felt like it helped a lot. But then a coworker of mine, so I used to work at the LA Times. It was a very stressful environment. And she's been doing Kundalini as a practitioner since the 70s. And so there was a room in the basement at the building in downtown at the time that was like, that, you could sign up to use, whatever you want to use it for, meetings or whatever. It's like a rec room. Yeah. So she's like, do you guys want to do yoga with me once a week? I'm like, so again, I'm just, going by the experience I had. So I'm like, oh yeah, sure. Why not? Lunchtime, and she goes, it's a little different. I'm like, whatever, I'm game, So all our colleagues, we all went downstairs and did it with her. And I was like, she was like, there's some chanting, there's some singing. We're like, singing, okay, whatever. And then, but I remember having this, I was crying, like I think the first time in class. I'm like, I don't know if I want to be crying with my colleagues. But I knew like emotionally what it did. And I just felt like I was holding so much stress, holding so much tension that I didn't even know I was holding, And then it was the first time I'm like, oh my God, like I'm having this huge response, this huge release. And each week was like that. I'm like, and then my colleague who was leading the classes, and I'm like, what's going on? Why am I crying so much? She goes, you're releasing. It's a good thing. And like, all the stuff that's been on your nerves, it's finally having a space to be, And I'm like, okay, this is before I went into coaching and got into that. But again, it was a beginning of the door opening for me to go deeper into my own healing journey. It was the start of all this. And, so at the time, So that, that started that. And I was just kind of practicing at home. With the Kundalini practices, so much of them have been written out in books, manuals. So you can just follow it. You can practice at home, open a book, and the instructions are like, chant this, do steps, 1 through whatever, how many are in the sequence. And then you chant again, and that's it. It's like, I'm like, okay. So I would open the book randomly each day and do that set, And I didn't take public classes because I thought, well, I have a book at home that I was practicing with, and I was having these wonderful experiences on my own. I'm like, so at that point, I was also not. I was like saving money, and I was like, well, if I could do this at home, I don't need to pay for a class, And then what happened was, and it's funny because I did my teacher training at Golden Bridge in Hollywood. It was at the time where it was behind the ArcLight Theater.
Yeah, and I remember.
You remember? Mm-hmm. And they had an incredible cafe with like salad bar, soup bar, and all this stuff. But they had an amazing chocolate cupcake. And the funny thing is, I would go there just for those cupcakes and for the bakery. I didn't even go there to practice. Not once. I didn't go there to practice. Not once did I practice there. And I was like, oh, there's other manuals. There's other books. So I could do this at home, So my nephew is autistic, and he was having a hard time at school. And then we got him assessed. And I'm like, well, you know what? I was thinking, the Kundalini stuff helped me. And there's a kids class on Saturday, and it's the same time as the adults class, So I thought, maybe I'll take him. Maybe this might help him. And so I asked my brother, asked my sister-in-law, hey, can I take him to yoga class? And then we'll see, maybe this will help.
How old was he at the time?
7.
Oh, okay.
8.
Young.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that became kind of our Saturday. From when he was 8 to about 11.
Oh, you did that for 3 years.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
So from 2008 to 2011, I think we did that most Saturday. But I did. So when 2009 came, that's when I saw that they were doing a teacher training. And at that time, I was already coaching clients. And since, there's so much of the work, the Kundalini practices were like these meditations and involving like, hand positions and breath practices. I thought, oh, this would be really great for my clients. Like if I, and then I also wanted to teach coaching workshops, but I was afraid to be in front of people. I had a fear of like public speaking. I'm like, well, then I thought, and everyone recommended like, oh, you should do Toastmasters or do something so that you feel more comfortable being in front of people so you could teach workshops. Then I thought, well, if I could teach a yoga class, and it'll kill multiple birds, right? It was like, one, I would have all these tools I can give clients. Two, maybe I have ways to help my nephew, and I'll feel comfortable speaking publicly.
Yeah.
So I figured that just did multiple things all at once. And it did much more than that, I think, that whole teacher training experience was a 9-month experience.
Oh, wow.
I think it was like an academic year, like September or October through May.
Wow.
It was one weekend every month.
And what did you see in your nephew as he was practicing for those 3 years? Did you see it help him? Did you see it change him?
Yeah.
What did you witness?
He enjoyed it at one time. He enjoyed it, and then he also just felt more grounded. Like I finally could see him, having tools, that if he was feeling anxious, or he felt scattered, there's something he could do to kind of. He was like, "Oh, I could do this." I'm like, "That's great."
Yeah,
yeah. That he had tools, and he didn't have to just have an episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for the people who are unfamiliar with Kundalini,
Yeah.
Can you give a brief description on what Kundalini is?
Yeah.
For those people who just see like yoga on TV or just think of, a typical vinyasa flow class.
Yeah.
How is Kundalini different, and where does it come from? Just like, what you can explain.
The interesting thing now, because there's so much, like our conversation now, Kundalini now, from where we are right now, is also a very different, it's a whole different thing now too, from when I was doing my training. So okay. So Kundalini Yoga as a style, I'll start there, is different from a vinyasa flow practice in that most of the poses are pretty different. They're pretty, you could hold your arms up, you could do certain movements where it's like inhale left, exhale right, rather than doing like a vinyasa, right? It's like where you are still linking breath with movement, but a lot of these movements are repeated. It's like inhale up, exhale down. You do this for 5 minutes,
Yeah.
So that would be one part of the set. A lot of the Kundalini sequences are also known as kriyas. It's almost like pre-written sets. There's a set for digestive system. There's a set for the spleen. There's a set for the liver. So each set has could range from 3 exercises to 25, right? So it's almost like just follow the prescription.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like the way that it's kind of talked about is like they're all nerve channels and meridian points like acupuncture, right? So instead of using needles, you're using movement, breath to manipulate and release all the stuff that's held in, so unblocking these nerve channels, and so energy can flow. So I guess healing in a sense in that regard is like energy flowing freely without obstruction, right? And then so you could pick one of these many sets to do. And if they're short sets, if you're teaching a class, you can do, maybe you could pick 3 short ones and kind of meld them together.
Okay.
Yeah. Again, but they're very different from a vinyasa practice because we don't, maybe I'm thinking one of the most familiar things are like cat-cows that is common. And then sometimes depending on different Kundalini teachers, you do sun salutations, or you do a half sun salutation. But a lot of teachers don't do them. A lot of teachers kind of do the repeated movements. The way that I learned, and I guess everyone at Golden Bridge and what we know as Kundalini Yoga in the States was started by a man named Yogi Bhajan in 1969. And so what we know is from Golden Bridge and all these other yoga studios, you see, like he was Sikh. So you see a lot of American Sikhs wearing white and kind of taking on this whole culture, because that's how he kind of formulated it around. So all the mantras were not Sanskrit. They were in a Punjabi dialect, because that's northern India where the Sikhs were from. So it's like a different dialect. So all the mantras come from that tradition. So again, I'm bringing it back to where things are now. So, and I have to talk about this because out of transparency too. In the last few years, a woman who used to work for Yogi Bhajan, her name is Pamela Dyson. She went by Premka. Everyone had a spiritual name. She was kind of Yogi Bhajan's right-hand person. And she wrote a book about all the stuff that happened, the abuse and all the stuff that happened. And from that book, so many people, it was like the Me Too movement in the Kundalini world. And I feel like even in the whole yoga world, I feel like a lot of that has been happening, like, in many regards. And then, so you see in the last few years, so many people coming out about like, wow, like letting go of the turban, letting go of this, letting go of that. Because it was a bit strict about wearing white. You have to do this. You have to do this. And a lot of people followed this whole very, very regimented thing. And that was the thing I feel like personally I never resonated with. Like in the beginning, I was like, okay, out of tradition, I wore white. And there was a point where I don't want to do that anymore. And then it's interesting because it was still at a time when that was in place, where everyone was doing it. And all of a sudden, I didn't use a spiritual name. I used my own name. I didn't wear white. I didn't do this. I didn't do that. Then you could feel the sense of like, oh, you're not doing the thing, Yeah. But now it's like no one's doing the thing. Like, so now I feel like we're at a time right now where even teaching Kundalini is like, oh, you're teaching Kundalini? Like now, I think in 2023, it's almost become like a thing where like, oh, like, why are you still supporting Yogi Bhajan? Like that kind of. So I think many people who enjoyed and like the practice has done so much, especially from the manuals and stuff, have kind of reinterpreted in their own way these days. And I feel like it's interesting because I've been doing that for many years. And then now it's interesting. Like people are saying like, yeah, don't follow the book. And I'm like, I haven't followed the book in a long time. I just never felt okay to talk about it, Yeah. Because it was so much like, then, and I think it's interesting that the practice, one of the mantras over and over was Sat Nam, which is truth and name. The whole idea of like being true to yourself. I felt like that was the whole heart of the practice, was like all this work was to support us in being true to ourselves. And then at the same time, it was like, yes, and it's like, you be true to yourself, and you have to be vegetarian, and you have to be this, and you have to wear white, and you have to da-da-da. I'm like, what happened to being true to yourself? Yeah. And none of that stuff meant anything to me. Like, why is that not okay? Yeah. So then it became this thing like, okay, well, I have to do me because that's what's being true to myself. If I'm going to be up in this room teaching people to be true to themselves, I'm not going to dictate what that means for anybody.
Yeah.
I'm like, so it's interesting in the light of everything coming out. I was like, wow, I'm glad people are like, all the stuff has finally come out and people feel free now to do whatever that means that's true for them.
Yeah, to be true to themselves.
Yeah.
I find that interesting with a lot of the different styles of yoga, actually. How it's extremely dogmatic.
Yes.
And how everything has to be this way.
Yeah.
And, for most people, they don't understand that, yes, the practice of yoga is thousands of years old.
Yeah.
But the practice of asana, as we know it today, is not that old.
Yeah.
It's only been, 150 years since all these asanas started coming into the scene.
Yeah.
So all those sequences, even my practice, Ashtanga, Iyengar, you were talking about how Yogi Bhajan and a bunch of stuff was uncovered around him, just like it did with Bikram and with the Anusara guy, like John Friend.
Yeah.
So, you have to remember that all of these styles were created by a guy, basically.
Yeah.
Just by a dude who thought this was the way to do things. But with that came the dogma of that's how it's supposed to be done.
Yeah.
And the practice of yoga for me, as it is clearly for you as well, is about personal, individual expression.
Yeah.
Like expressing your authenticity within the framework of the practice.
Yeah.
And I have a really difficult time with it. It's actually, so Yoga Works wanted me to become a teacher trainer for them.
Right.
I ultimately did not become a teacher trainer for Yoga Works because of this very reason. Because they wanted me to teach this curriculum exactly this way.
Yes.
And I remember I was having a conversation with one of the training leaders.
Yeah.
And they said that I taught too extreme. That I let people go too far in their practices. And that Yoga Works was for the middle ground. It wasn't for the extremes on both end of the spectrum. It was for the middle ground because that's where most people are.
Okay.
And my point, and I said this in the conversation, was why limit people? Why limit them to what you think is supposed to be yoga?
Yeah.
Because that's not the practice.
Yeah.
Like the practice is, like you said, Satnam is being truthful to yourself.
Yeah.
And whatever that is.
Yeah.
That's the practice.
Yeah.
Because we're not all going to wear white all the time. We're not all. Yeah. I mean, this is my uniform. I like wear white t-shirts every day, and it's really because I'm lazy. That's the only reason I wear white t-shirts, because they're inexpensive.
Yeah.
I get a pack of 6 for like $20. And then when it's time for me to get new ones, I just go buy another pack of 6.
Yes. Yes.
And I don't have to worry about it anymore. But this whole dogma thing, it really gets under my skin. And it's interesting how it's everywhere in the yoga world. I mean, it's everywhere. Everywhere.
Yeah.
Even friends of mine who think like this is how you're supposed to teach back bends.
Yeah.
Like this is how.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, that's not how I practice my back bends.
Yeah.
But this is why, and they can give me all the great reasons. I'm like, okay, that's great for you.
Yeah.
But that's not great for me.
Yeah.
And chances are that's not going to be great for everybody.
Yeah.
So, I understand that people need to write a manual. Like, and in order to write a manual, you have to put down words.
Right.
And those words create this framework.
Right.
But then I think people get stuck.
Yeah.
in that frame.
I feel like there needs to be the extra like it's like if it's 13 steps, step 14 should be like go have fun with it and experiment and find you in this and play.
Yeah.
Like I'm a huge food person. I think in food a lot. And you think about like, if I give someone my favorite chocolate chip cookie recipe, it might be too sweet for somebody.
I think I'm going to need that recipe, by the way, but please continue.
I have some great ones.
Okay, good.
It's that whole thing. Like, someone could immediately make my recipe and go, oh, this is shit. This is way too sweet. It's way too much chocolate, way too fill in the blank, right? Rather than, oh, I'm going to try Pete's recipe. I'm going to put half cup less sugar. I'm going to put half cup less this. I'm going to add walnuts because I like nuts in the cookies and I might not, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, please make it your own. Like I would say, yeah, try mine first. If it's too sweet, then round 2, do you.
That's the foundation. Here's the foundation.
Yeah.
My recipe is where you begin.
Yeah.
And no, I love that because I'm the same way. and my teaching reflects this. Everything in my life reflects this. Like, here's how I do it.
Yeah.
Please take it and make it yours.
Yes.
However that's going to look, however it's going to taste in this context, by all means, make it better for you.
Yes.
But you know what? I also think people have a tough time doing that.
Yeah.
I think most people just want to be told what's good, what's not good,
right,
how to do things, how not to do them, and then just do that.
Yeah.
And I think that's why teachers like you are so valuable, because the individual expression is truly how we make ourselves happy.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, without authentic expression,
right,
and unfettered, without judgment, that's when we are our happiest.
Yes.
Even when our expression goes sideways.
Yes.
Even when, but that's how we learn from it, right? So let's say I express myself in this one particular way and it offends somebody.
Yeah.
I can see that.
Yes.
And that's when I can be like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
My authentic expression offended that person. I can either, make it right with that person, adjust if it's appropriate and it feels authentic to me, but or continue doing what I'm doing and then who cares? I mean, I'm going to find my tribe, which I think, all 3 of those answers are correct. First of all, it just depends on the context, who you're with, and obviously what you're doing. And as long as nobody gets hurt, that's, I think, the caveat is as long as nobody is getting hurt, express yourself to your heart's content. And it's only through that expression do we learn, right? That's the whole point behind being social, right? That's how the social context and the social environment help mold us. It's because we act like an asshole and we realize, oh, from their reaction, I'm clearly being an asshole. Let me adjust how I'm doing things. Or we do things and be like, that felt amazing. They may not like it. They may think I'm weird. I don't care. I don't care. The foundation. Thank you for laying the foundation, especially with chocolate chip cookies, because I love chocolate chip cookies. But for people being able to be self-expressed, because that's how people are, like, that's how I feel anyways, are truly their happiest. Is when they're fully self-expressed. Have you been to Burning Man?
No.
You'd love it because it's the biggest takeaway I've always had from Burning Man. And the first time I went, I think I've been like 7 or 8 times now. The first takeaway was the space to be authentically expressed with zero fear of judgment.
Wow.
Because that's what I find inhibits most people. Is the fear of judgment. Not the judgment itself.
It's the fear of it.
It's the fear of it. Like, what will people think of me if I scream at the top of my lungs right now? So then they don't.
Yeah.
And then they don't ever feel that. First of all, they don't ever feel that expression.
Yeah.
And then they don't learn either if their fear was warranted or not.
Yeah.
Because most of the time, I find anyways, it's not.
Yeah.
It's just the fear
Yeah.
that stops us.
Yes.
It's not the expression.
No.
You know, in my classes, I try to get people to make sounds.
Yes.
I want people to make sounds.
Yes.
Like I'll do like a lion's breath from time to time, and I'll guide it, and I'll get people, and I'll do one, and I'm like, come on, we can do better than that. Like we can do better than that. Let's make some sounds.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah.
And then what I always like to say, and I find it to be so true, is if you think you're going to look weird,
Yeah.
chances are it's going to feel really good.
Yes. Exactly.
Because that's what it's about.
Yeah.
It's taking that.
It's taking that, and then to give it is giving yourself, it is the freedom, the space to have catharsis. Like I think like even like I feel I was thinking coming to the chocolate chip cookie, it's like when you have something delicious and you're like, you take that first bite and you're like, it's like not giving yourself that, it's like, oh, it's not okay to you know? It's like, oh, I can't even have that.
Yeah.
You know, and so like I encourage everyone to sigh in class. I'm like, sigh it out when you exhale, because then every part of your body can hear you, you know, can hear you releasing the shit you've been holding.
Yeah.
I go, and I'm like, you know, I'm like, you're muted anyway. You can do whatever the hell you want.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because you're on Zoom.
On Zoom. I'm like, sigh. I'm like, feel free. Make all the noise you want, you know?
Yeah.
And then I'm like, the more noise you make, it's like the stuff, I'm like, get angry, get upset, but know that it's okay. Because it's like whatever needs to come out of, you know? So it's like giving yourself permission.
Yeah.
It is I feel like it does come back to permission. If someone doesn't feel safe enough, if someone's not in a space where they feel like we bring up Burning Man, like it's a space where everyone could feel like, I can exhale, I can sigh, I can scream, I can dance, I can move however this body wants to move, you know? And I feel like that's so important to have that safe space. And I'm like, I feel like, you know, like, I feel like that's the thing I these days too, I feel like in class, I'm like, I come back to that all the time. I'm like, you may be waiting for someone to give you a safe space, but you have to create it.
Yeah.
You have to create that for yourself, for every cell in your body. You're the one creating the safe space. So these days I always start, I mean, it's not that different from how I used to teach, but I feel like the context is much more on that now. Like where I'm like, we always start in Shavasana. We always start like, come lay down. And the thing I always call it plopping. I go, just let yourself completely plop. Like, don't do anything. And like, I'm like, what that does. And I'm like, don't even worry about how you look. Don't worry. Just like, let yourself plop. And the more you can let the ground do the work, hold you up, let gravity be your friend, and so you do nothing.
Yeah.
I'm like, what that begins to do is that you begin to cultivate this relationship, this trust that tells your nerves, it's like, I don't have to do anything and I am completely safe and supported. There's this ground underneath me holding me up and I don't have to do anything for it. There's this air that we're breathing. I don't have to do anything for it. Yeah. It's there. And I said, but it takes a while for our nervous system to go, oh, I don't have to work for this. And then the great news is, as long as we're working, then we go into fight or flight. We have to, you know, like the whole idea of the relaxation response, that we don't drop out of fight or flight into rest and digest until our bodies and our nerves feels completely safe. Because as long as we're working, as long as we're active, you know, the body still thinks there's a bear outside or some psycho killer, right? Yeah. So it can't tell the difference, because as long as we're active, as long as we think we need to effort ourselves. So I'm like, let's start with not efforting to begin to cultivate that foundation of trust and safety. Then we build everything on top of that safety. because then we can move freely. Then we can do action on top of safety rather than let's just go. And, like, because then from that point on, I feel like the awareness piece is huge. Like, so now, like when I teach, it is like noticing the feedback. Like if you're moving and breathing in a certain way, do you find yourself, and this is something I guess I also picked up from in Qigong practices, is like the whole idea of contraction and expansion of like, so a constant question I ask everyone to ask themselves is what I'm doing creating tightness and contraction, or is what I'm doing right now creating more spaciousness and expansion? So then they're constantly checking in. So like I'm like, well, there's all these ways of breathing, right? You can inhale through the nose, you can sigh, you can exhale through the nose, you can do breath of fire. There's all these ways of breathing that you can, and again, coming back to food, you can always pair like a drink with your dish, right? I'm like, so here's the movement we're doing. Pair a breath of your choice with this movement. So the book might say you have to do breath of fire, but I don't do that anymore. I don't have to anything because we already have enough have tos in the body. So I'm like, so cut that crap, right? So I'm like, try on. So like, let's try on in through the nose, out through the nose, pair it with this movement. Then notice the feedback your body's giving you. Are you clenching? So if you're clenching, that's your internal GPS system go, wrong way. Let's try another breath. But I'm like, so I feel like these days more and more, it's like teaching these behind the scenes stuff. Like, I'm like, I want everyone to notice like what is their bodies telling them? What is their nervous system telling them? Like, are you creating an environment of more space and ease and spaciousness rather than I'm just going to do what Pete says because I'm, but inside they're clenching the whole time. I'm like, I don't want you to be clenching the whole time.
It creates more tension.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm like, find space. So go at your own, so everyone's going at their own pace. I'm like, spend time and observe, hang out with your nerves and cells and go at a pace where it's like, you're not creating this.
Yeah.
So now it's like more and more, it's like, here's what now they know what to look for as they're moving and breathing. And then now it's just a bunch of tools. Right. So I'm like, so here's this movement. We're going to do this movement and pair your breath of choice with this. Next one.
Yeah.
But I'm like, you have to make your own chocolate chip cookie.
Yeah. You got to add your own ingredients.
Yeah.
You have to.
You have to.
No, and that's exactly why in my classes, I teach a vinyasa flow class. And in my classes, I don't give alignment cues. I don't say you've got to be heel to heel aligned or you have to be heel to toe I don't do any of that because each body's different and each person is going to need their own unique alignment. I always tell people, because I'll get asked, because people just want to know what the right answer is.
Yes.
They're like, I hear this from this teacher and that from that teacher. What do you say? I'm like, I say try one for 3 months. See how it feels. And if you don't like it, and if you find out before that 3 months, do it the other way and see how that feels. Allow your body, your practice to inform you. And people will ask me, and it's in alignment with this. They'll ask, who's your favorite yoga teacher? And I always know. I'm like, they want to go practice with my favorite yoga teacher. And my response is, and it's the same response every single time. I say, it's my practice. My practice itself is my favorite teacher. I've learned, and nobody likes hearing that. Like, oh no, but like, who is it? Is it Vinny? Is it? Who is it? And I'm like, it's the practice. I've learned more from the practice than from any one teacher. And I think it's because, as you like to teach, I've added my own ingredients. And I have found what works for me. Now, with that said, my practice primarily is Ashtanga,
Yeah.
which is interesting because it is a set sequence of poses.
Yes.
And I don't deviate from it.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
I stick to my practice, but I find my ingredients within it.
Yes.
Within my Ashtanga sequence.
That's your recipe.
That's my recipe.
Yeah.
I like Ashtanga because it has laid a foundation.
Yeah.
And it also gives me the opportunity to create within it.
Yeah.
Which is one of the reasons why I've never been to Mysore. Because I've heard in Mysore, it's dogmatic. Like, and actually there's 2 different schools of Ashtanga right now. One is, and they apparently don't get along with one another. So it's Sharath Joyce, who is Patabi's grandson. Because Patabi Joyce died in, when did he die? I forget, like 2007, 8 or 9 or something like that. And then I think his wife, Patabi's wife, his widow, runs another school.
Oh, wow. Okay, this is the grandson and his wife.
Yeah.
Have 2 opposing schools?
Yes.
Wow.
And you can't practice at both.
Wow.
It's one or the other.
Wow.
And apparently there's bad juju.
Wow.
So I find that very interesting because, and that's where the dogma comes in. And it's like, you have to do it this way.
Yeah.
And I like your approach so much better. It's like, you find what works for you.
Yeah.
You add it to what you've already brought to that moment and see how it transforms and moves you forward.
Yeah.
Because chances are you're going to pick up another tool down the road.
Yeah.
Probably pretty soon, especially if you are practicing and you are practicing presence and awareness.
Yes.
You're going to consistently pick up new tools that is going to ultimately change everything.
Yeah.
You know, because I tell people it's like you're making a soup.
Yeah.
And you can have all of your favorite ingredients in a soup.
Yeah.
And then you just pick up this new spice.
Yeah.
And it's not even that much. You're just putting a pinch in there and it changes the flavor of everything.
Yes.
I'm like, that's what you're looking for in your practice. Yeah. Not necessarily looking for, but that's what you leave the space to come in.
Yeah.
Is that spice.
Yeah.
Is that little herb that's going to come in and change everything that you've already put into it.
Yeah. It's the umami.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I love that.
It's like I always say like treat each time you come to the mat, treat each practice that we do on your own, treat it like it's a lab, like to explore, like what does my body need today? Like where do I hold tension? What part of me is asking or calling for my care and attention today? Yeah. And you'll notice it. I'm like, it's like, I'm like that's the feedback mechanism. Like you're doing something and something is clenching. That's letting you know, like, something could be held there. Something is like, like, okay, where can you bring that to soften that knee-jerk reaction somewhere in your body that's doing this? Yeah. Then you can, like hang out there as it might just be bringing your attention there and breathing. Yeah. And then noticing that with every exhale, you're like, oh my God, there's more space now. Or even when you're breathing, there all of a sudden could be memories popping up. You're like, oh, wow, I was holding anger about so-and-so at this spot. And I was, yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. And I think about I always come back to that phrase, right? Because we could all relate to the someone on our nerves or something on our nerves. I go, we have 72,000 of them. And God knows what we've been holding in our lifetime, right? We don't know until we get on that mat and it's like, you don't know what's held there until you're on it and go like, well, this needs to come out today, obviously, because it's coming up for whatever reason.
That's exactly why I started setting intentions for my practice. Yeah. So I remember when I first started teaching, people would come up to me afterwards and they're like, oh, I really like how you set an intention for your classes. Where did you come up with that? Where'd you get that? What teacher told you that? And it's my practice once again.
Yeah.
You know, because I do that very thing. I step onto the mat and I'm like, I close my eyes every day.
Yeah.
Every single day. And I'm like, okay, I just check in. What do I need?
Yeah.
What is there something calling? And whatever comes to the surface, that's it.
Yeah.
That is it.
Yeah.
And it could be a physical thing.
Yeah.
It could be a cognitive thing,
Yeah.
an emotional thing, a life thing. It could be, I mean, I have set intentions. Let me see, how can I frame this? I have set intentions of being love,
Yeah.
being kindness,
Yeah.
to opening my hips, to, and I've actually done this before, to getting a motorcycle. I've done that. I set the intention. I'm like, I will find my motorcycle.
Yes.
And I did.
That's awesome.
So I only frame it that way because that's what would come up for me that day.
Yeah.
And you know what? I have to honor that.
Yes.
I'm not gonna shove that aside because it's not quote unquote what, add in, fill in the blank there.
Yeah.
Totally. It's like, I do that stuff.
Yeah.
I do the unconditional love. I do the kindness. I do the forgiveness. I even check in with the shadow. I honor the ego too. And I work with the chakras. I look at the koshas. I do the 8 limbs. I do all of that stuff. But sometimes I gotta get some energy out. Sometimes I feel some frustration and I need to get it the fuck out.
Yes.
And that's exactly what that practice is for.
Yes.
And so I started setting intentions for my classes to give people the space to do exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
And it's funny to go back to what we were talking about earlier. I'll tell my classes sometimes because, you're the teacher and you're the one speaking. So everybody's there to listen to what you have to say and you're guiding them through their practice. Yeah. I'll tell them, I give you permission to give yourself permission.
That's great. I want to use that.
Please.
I love that.
I give you permission to give yourself permission to do this. Like, just do it. If it feels good and it's not hurting anybody, do it.
Yes.
And you find out, you're going to find out how good it feels.
Yes.
And if it doesn't feel good, then don't do it again.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
If you don't like that many chocolate chips in the cookie, take some out.
Exactly. And I'm like, don't use the visual of chocolate chips if you're not a chocolate person.
Yeah.
You won't, if you have a nut allergy, you won't be putting nuts in there, So like, I was like, even like with visualization, I think people are like, why are, so like, I get asked a lot of this too. It's like, because root chakra is red and weren't we supposed to use red for this? And I'm like, do you like red? I'm like, not really. I'm like, why would you visualize red if you don't like red? I'm like, I go, think about visualizing something that you don't like. What is the feedback your body is giving you? Like it's more of this or ugh, right? I'm like, why would that bring you more abundance? Because some book said red is going to whatever color, right? I'm like, so I always saying like, whoever wrote the book telling you what colors to visualize or whatever, it works for that author.
Exactly.
So I was like, play, because you might not like red, you might not like pink, you might not like whatever. So I would say use the colors you love if you want to bring more of that, the feeling in your life, like don't get trapped by what, I'm like, again, it works for that author. Because I bring it back to the whole brain thing too. I'm like, whatever, like that whole pre-rehearsal thing for athletes, because the brain doesn't know whether you're doing something or not. Like the whole, like if you're visualizing you're running a marathon, like the brain still thinks you're running a marathon, so like energetically, and the brain is still producing dopamine, oxytocin, endorphins, all the stuff the brain is producing is still matching whatever it is you're visualizing. So I'm like, well, okay, if you want your body to feel more safe, and feel more warmth, caring, you want to use colors that you feel like, ooh, cozy colors. So again, I can't tell you what colors to visualize.
Yeah.
Because cozy for you is whatever that is for you. If I say, guys, we're going to inhale red because red means cozy, and you're going to go, oh God, I have a horrible experience. Pete's such a crappy teacher because he had me visualize red. I'm like, no, I go, let's not do that.
Yeah.
Let's go with things you like, because then that would bring in more of that, so it's like, let's go behind the whole, like the prescriptions, it's like, what's behind that? What's the intention of the prescriptions is to generate this.
Yeah.
And then what generates this, again, coming back to the chocolate chip cookie recipe, is different for every one of us.
Yeah. And even for the person who originally wrote the recipe.
Yes.
Like it's like that with, every one of these styles, right?
Yes.
Getting back to how they were all, created by some guy who said, this is what works for me.
Yes.
And so I'm going to share that, because that's all the teachers do.
Yes.
That's all any teacher ever does, is share with those who want to listen what worked for them.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, but there's this new level of teacher now that I place you in this group of teachers that create the space for their students to become their own teachers.
Yes, I think that's so important.
I think it's very important.
Yeah.
And what I like to do is, because sometimes people will do that with me as well in class, about how, the cozy example you gave.
Yeah.
So if we're gonna look at cozy and feel cozy, you don't give a color like red, because I imagine cozy as a beach ball. And so if you and I had a beach ball in the middle, right?
Yeah.
And on that beach ball were the big letters that read cozy.
Yeah.
Right? And there's a big cozy beach ball.
Yeah.
But on this beach ball, from your perspective, you're going to see yellow, blue, and
white.
red and white.
Yeah.
I'm going to see purple, green, orange.
Yes.
It's still the same beach ball.
Exactly.
But we see it from a different light, from a different perspective, ultimately to this context, a different color.
Yes.
So, no, I think that's amazing, Pete. I think I wish there were more teachers like that, because
Me too.
a lot of teachers out there, they just say, this is the way that it's done. And if you're not doing it this way, then you're not doing it the right way.
Yeah.
As soon as I hear somebody say, this is the way, I'm like, unless it's the Mandalorian. The Mandalorian, you could say this is the way. Everybody else, as soon as I hear somebody say this is the way, I'm like, that's your way.
Yes.
That's not my way.
Yeah.
That's not everybody's way.
No.
That's your way. God bless you for having your way.
Yes.
But don't tell me it's the way.
Yeah. It's a way.
It's a way.
Yeah.
And there's a way of something that you describe that I would love for you to share, because I think the way you describe it is so well put. I want you to tell everybody about your practice with ease.
No.
Because I find it so important in my life and in my practice, especially practicing Ashtanga, and I'm in my upper 40s now.
Yeah.
And I've been practicing Ashtanga since my early 30s, mid 30s. Yeah, early to mid 30s, when I had much more fire in me and much more, heat and angst and, drive. Yeah. And now I'm in my upper 40s and I don't have that, but I still want to carry my practice. Yeah. And it's also the reason, or at least the thing that I always tell people when they say, isn't Ashtanga a masculine practice? Because I'll often have women say, Ashtanga looks, I've been attracted to it before, but it's so masculine. Like it's such a masculine practice. I'm like, well, it doesn't have to be.
No, it doesn't have to be.
It's like the recipe. It's like the chocolate chip cookie.
Yeah.
Like, there's the cookie. What you put inside of it is up to you.
Yeah.
So I would love, and ease has been huge for me because I want to be strong in my body. First of all, I want to be strong in my body. I have an 8-year-old. I want to pick her up. I want to throw her for a really long time.
Yeah.
I love to surf. I want to be able to surf big waves, paddle out, and you need a strong body for that. And I want to be flexible. So I practice a physically demanding style of yoga.
Yeah.
However, for my heart and for my mind, I practice ease within it.
Yes.
Because I found I used to put so much effort into things. Like, I mean, I was like pushing. I never let people say push anymore in my class. I'm like, you just push us. I'm like, no.
Yeah, I don't either.
no more pushing. Allow.
Yeah.
Don't push.
Yeah.
Allow.
Yeah.
Because things want to move.
Yes.
Your body wants to move.
Yes.
Your heart wants to move.
Yeah.
Your mind wants to move. Your life wants to move.
Right.
You just have to allow it to move.
Yes.
And so I have to really find that ease because I used to put so much effort into things.
Yes.
And I just found that was just building more tension.
Right.
Exactly what you were saying earlier
Totally.
about all these people
Yeah.
who are always in that fight or flight mode, which is very common in big cities, especially LA.
Right.
People, I mean, everywhere you go, people are in fight or flight.
Yeah.
In their car, at the store, in the restaurant, at the bank, at the beach, like on hikes. Like people are in fight or flight and they're just creating so much tension.
So much tension. And I'm like, look at the environment that creates in their tension.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
There's no safety there.
No, there's no
For
safety.
themselves, for anyone around them.
No, that's a time bomb ticking, waiting to go off.
Right.
Like, and it's not like the time bomb set for 20, 30 years.
Right.
It's maybe an hour or two.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Because, you and I, before this podcast, were talking about our love for the Japanese culture.
Yes.
And that's one of the things that I have noticed about the Asian culture in general is they don't carry their frustration and their tension into everything that they do. Yeah. Americans do that. Yeah. In particular, Californians and specifically Los Angelinos.
Yes. I agree.
We carry our tension with us wherever we go because we're in that constant fight or flight, and the Asian cultures don't really do that. And when I was in India, I spent a month in India, and I didn't see, first of all, have you been to India?
No.
Oh, it's bananas. Like India is wild. It's pure chaos, but it works. Like there's order and ease within the chaos.
Yes.
Like if we were to drive like the Indians drive, there would be no more people here. Everybody would kill each other.
Wow.
It is pure bananas over there. But since they don't carry that tension, since they're not constantly in that fight or flight angst mode, they don't have that interaction.
Space.
Yeah, there's space.
Yeah.
They have ease within their hearts, within their lives, no matter what they encounter. Yeah. So, please, tell us how you practice ease.
So, I think one of the things to talk about in terms of ease is also when I think people hear ease, they think easy. Ease isn't necessarily easy. Ease is something we cultivate over time, and it does ask for awareness. It's like, it's the how we do something. It's the consciousness around how we do anything, really. It's like the bringing ease into something. And then I think I could illustrate just like, I would ask people, students I'm like, without me saying a single word, just listen to how I'm breathing. Is that I go, what's the story there? I don't even have to talk, but then they're like, oh, you're stressed. I'm like, I'm like, what is someone who is bringing ease into their breath? What is that like? And then I'm like, and then so I'm like, we start right? We start having like, okay, let's bring more ease. And then start breathing. So it's like, think of the breath as a way to illustrate that. Like you're teaching your nervous system. I'm training my nerves how to cultivate more ease. Like if I'm breathing, if I find myself going, I'm hyperventilating because I'm freaking out because my brain thinks there's a bear outside, or because maybe there is some strange person outside the house, right? And I go into a freak out or something, but how can I come back to regulate? How can I soften and bring ease back? And then if we cultivate that over time, you layer this awareness, like, in our practices on the mat, for example, or even grocery shopping. It's just being aware of like, how am I breathing right now? What's the story of how I'm breathing right now? What is that informing the rest of me? If I go, wow, my breath is stressful, like, what is that doing to the rest of me? If is there ease in my breathing? I'm like, oh, that's good. Breathing is easy right now. The inhale's easy. The exhale's easy. Fantastic. Because that informs everything else, right? So then in practice, one thing, again, I feel like it is an ongoing training. We train our nerves that we're safe. It's in that safety that I feel like ease can then find a space, because again, when we're in fight or flight, it's just survival.
Yeah.
We're do, go. There's no time for spaciousness because we're in a rush, right? And then so the body and the mind think we're always in this constant rush. It's like to remind ourselves, like, whoa, how am I breathing right now? It's not easy. There's not a state of ease. But if I'm starting to bring that, even when I'm stuck in traffic, right? And it's like, wow, I could bring that sensibility into everything.
Yeah.
So
it's almost as if ease and safety,
hand in hand.
Hand in hand.
Yeah. One thing, my friend and also yoga and Qigong teacher, you might know Matthew Cohen.
Yeah. I haven't seen him in years.
Yeah. He used to.
I practiced with him at Center for Sacred Movement.
Yeah. So I've known him for years, friends for a long time. And I did his teacher training. And I love how he weaves Qigong with yoga. And one of the things that he always used to say was, find that sweet spot where effort and effortless meet. So it's just
Sthira Sukhasanam.
Yeah.
That's it in Sanskrit.
Yeah. And in Chinese, in Qigong, there's an expression called Wu Wei, means effortless ease. So it's like, and then it makes me think about music when we're listening and enjoying music, right? If you're turning up the volume, especially if we're not used to it, if you're turning up the volume, you're like, when you turn up the volume too high, it goes into the red zone. Then the music sounds like crap. It's all crackly.
Yeah.
But if you turn it down to that point where it's like the edge of red, it's loud, but it's also like you're getting to enjoy it without the fuzz.
Yeah.
But also our capacity for loudness or bigness, or it's like increases over time. So that's the cultivating our ears to hear louder things or be around bigger, spacious things. So again, that volume could go up over time. So that ease the more our nervous system, our bodies are used to like the state of that wonder, the more we hang out in that effort and effortless spot.
Yeah.
We're not bringing in tension.
Yeah.
So I'm like, in class, I'm like, so as you inhale up, exhale down, whatever it is, even though you're doing a vinyasa, I'm like, notice how you're moving and breathing, right? Is how you're moving and breathing illustrating, you're finding that sweet spot where you're not creating tension.
Yeah.
Where every exhale, you're like, oh my God, there's more and more space with every exhale. And like, that's the zone, right? So, so when you're marinating in that zone, you train your nerves that, yes, more of that, please, right? Hang out there more.
Yeah.
Because that helps to cultivate more and more ease over time.
That's exactly like the point of Ashtanga. Is so the way that Ashtanga works is, at least from my perspective, from my
yes
chocolate chip cookie recipe,
please, love it,
is It is a physically demanding practice, but it's being able to find that balance between effort and ease. So in Sanskrit, in the sutras, it's called, so in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, which is where Ashtanga comes from, it's called Sthira Sukham Asanam, is to find that balance between effort and ease within asana. Because to hold asana takes some effort.
Yeah.
But there's purpose behind it.
Yes.
You know, it has healing properties.
Yes.
It has strengthening. It can create space, balance, confidence, so many different things.
Yes.
But if you have tension in it, it's doing more harm than it is good.
Yeah.
So the way that Ashtanga works is you're given a sequence, and in your sequence, you know, there's 6 sequences in set sequences in Ashtanga. There's primary, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. You just continue moving through them, one asana at a time. And so you're given your practice, and at the end of your practice is what's called your peak pose. It's the one that you don't have any ease in yet. How you move on, how you get the next pose, is when you can find ease in your breathing, in your peak pose. So once you're there, then the teacher gives you the next one, and then right back to where you were. Yeah. So it's that, just like you were saying with the turning the volume up to that just below the red line, and then you've created the capacity to turn it up just a little bit more, and then a little bit more, a little bit more. It's like that in Ashtanga. Yeah. So, you know, because there are lots of people that can do crazy things with their bodies, but I always look for, and you and I are on the same team with the breath. Yeah. Like, it's all about the breath.
All about the breath.
It's all about the breath. Yeah. I tell my classes, it's the first thing you do coming into this life and the last.
Yeah.
So what you do in that frame is called your life.
Yeah.
And it's all determined upon how you're breathing. Yeah. So if you can find ease in these uncomfortable positions, it gives you strength. Yes. It gives you, it not only strengthens your body, but it strengthens your soul. Yeah. It strengthens your spirit. It strengthens your will. Yeah. It strengthens your heart. Yeah. It all of that. Yeah. So finding the ease within your breath. Yeah. While doing these things. Yeah. I mean, that's why, so my class is a really challenging, physically challenging class for this very reason. You know, because I'll have people come up to me, and I've always taught a very physically demanding class. Yeah. I'll have people come up to me and say, I've heard great things about your class, but I haven't been practicing yoga very long, or they're not in great shape. And they'll say, so I haven't felt like I'm ready, or I'm even supposed to be there. I'm like, no, like, don't get intimidated by the 2-3 or level 3 or how physically demanding it is. All of that, I don't think your physical capabilities have anything to do with which class you walk into. Yeah. It's what your heart can handle. Yeah. It's what is calling to you. Yeah. Because if you're being called to that practice, you're being called for a reason. Yeah. There's something for you there. Yeah. I lead my class in a way to where it's physically demanding for everybody. Yeah. So that everybody has more ease they can cultivate in that practice. Yeah. That's wonderful.
And I feel like from the more we cultivate, the more like we get used to hanging out in those spaces of ease. Again, it's training every aspect of our life that we could bring out off the mat. The more we can embody it.
Into your driving. Yeah. Into those other uncomfortable moments in your life. Yeah. So that's what I always talk about with asana too. Yeah. I'm like, that's the true gift of asana is being able to be comfortable in an uncomfortable situation. Yeah. So it's not necessarily being able to put your foot behind your head. Right. It's being able to remain calm while doing it. Right. Because that will translate to when you're sitting in traffic,
Right.
and when somebody cuts you off, when your day's just not going well, when you have that bad conversation with a loved one, or whatever it may be, that uncomfortable position, or the last 3 years of us living through discomfort collectively.
Yes.
You know, the people who did well and actually thrived, I found were people who were able to find that ease within discomfort.
Yeah.
The people who don't have that tool,
Right.
they had a difficult time.
Yeah.
They had a difficult time.
Right.
You and I remained in contact.
Yeah.
And we did okay.
We did okay.
Yeah. We actually led two teacher trainings together during this time. And we saw each other often and spoke often. And I know for a fact that you did well, and here you are, and here we are. And I think it's because of your ability to be able to find the ease within that discomfort, because we do live in LA.
Yes.
And you grew up here.
Yeah.
And it's uncomfortable as shit, like a lot of the times.
Yes.
So we were talking about our love for Japan, because my wife and I just got back. And I mean,
what contrast. Right. It's very interesting coming back to LA. When you leave LA and you come back, and I really feel like, wow, like when you travel and especially living in LA and being from LA, you really get that experience of, whoa, being back in LA feels like.
Oh man.
Yeah.
It gets harder.
Yeah.
I'll be honest.
Yeah, it is harder.
It gets harder and harder every time.
Yeah.
So I started traveling internationally, I guess in 1999, 98, 99. I started traveling internationally, somewhere around then. And it's been getting harder and harder and harder to come home.
Yeah.
This last trip, I mean, Japan, first of all, is magic.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody's so nice.
Yeah.
If you're at a restaurant or anywhere, and the person you're talking to doesn't speak any English, and a lot of Japanese people do not speak English, they all have a translator on their phone. They open it up, boom, 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 they talk into it, and there you go.
Yeah.
They want you to know what they're saying.
Yeah.
I've heard people in the United States tell tourists, we speak English here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's been getting harder and harder to come back. Japan was special, especially hard because of how sweet the people are.
Yeah.
We had to fly in through Seattle. So we had a 2-hour layover in Seattle. We had a direct flight from LA to Tokyo on the way there. On the way back, though, we had to fly through Seattle. The very first person that we encounter, the customs person, they usually aren't very cool, but this person was very uncool. It was so hard, Pete. This woman was so mad at everything, everybody, everything, and it wasn't busy. Like, we got there, we were the first off our plane because we thought we might miss our connection, so we jammed off of our plane, got our bags, ran to immigration, and we were the first person in line. And this woman was just like so rude to us.
Oh gosh.
And then so we get through that, and then the security person, very rude too, and I was like, oh man, here we go. And then it kills me, and it happens, I want to say 100% of the time. We're in the car on our way home from LAX after just coming in from out of town, out of the country, and the driver's here. They just remind me immediately, like how people live here.
Yeah.
It's hard.
It's hard.
It's hard.
I feel it sometimes the moment we walk out right off the plane into the gate. I feel like I can just feel like I could just feel like this already, like this gripping sense in my body. I'm like, oh, we're back.
Yeah,
it's back. In the air. And it's interesting. Like, have you been to Hawaii?
Yeah.
I could feel the sense of calm that I feel in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
The few times I've been to Hawaii, the moment I stepped off the plane, even just right at the airport, I could feel like this, like a hush. Like, I'm like, what is this?
Yeah.
Like immediately, like I'm like, wow. Like I feel safe. There's a calm in the air, and like I'm like, what is this? You know, but it was there. And it's when I went to Japan the first time, same thing. I was like, whoa. And I thought in Tokyo, there's thousands of people
in one intersection.
Yeah.
In one intersection.
Yeah. And I felt so calm.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, this is amazing. Because this is not LA.
Have you been to Tahiti?
No, not yet.
Oh, man. Do you want to talk about feeling calm as soon as the plane lands?
Oh, wow.
Tahiti.
Wow.
It's easy to get to from LA.
Okay.
It's a direct flight. It's 9 hours,
Oh.
but it's a red eye. And if you can sleep on a plane,
yes,
they're 3 hours behind us, just like Hawaii.
Oh.
So you wake up. It's a red eye. You wake up at like 6 a.m. You landed. Good to go.
Wow.
The people are amazing. The island's stunning.
Wow.
I mean, all the islands are just absolutely spectacular. The food's really good.
Yeah. Amazing.
All the like famous French chefs retire there. So the food's amazing.
Wow.
But what I want to transition into is music.
Yeah.
Because you lead a great sound bath. I remember when we did the first online yoga festival.
Yeah.
It was Fall Arises. And you did a sound bath. And everybody was on Zoom. Like, so everybody's listening on their devices and headphones. And at the time, I was traveling. I was actually in Oregon when we did Fall Arises.
Yeah.
And so I only had earbuds. I didn't even have these nice, fancy, like over the ear noise I didn't have any of that. I had earbuds. And you led a sound bath. And I remember laying down. I'm like, I'm not sure how this is going to go, but here we go. Here we are. You know, it's all online and earbuds. And I laid down, and I remember the first 5 minutes of it, and then I was gone. Like, gone. I don't know where I was. Yeah. I wasn't asleep, but I was in another dimension. Yeah. And then you brought us out, and I remember being so amazed and just like, whoa, what was that? Where did I go? What did he do? I don't know, but that was fantastic. So how did you get into sound baths? And actually, before we talk about how you get into sound bath, describe to those who aren't aware of what a sound bath is or what it does. Describe what it is and does.
Okay. So sound bath could be from many different instruments, right? So, but like, I like using the gong. A gong sound bath is really deep and resonant. So think of, I always think of like waves, like sound waves, like just being in the ocean, right? Just being like, standing in the ocean and letting like ocean waves wash over you, but instead of water, it's sound, right? But then sound it's vibrational, we're all made up of vibration, So I like to think of a sound bath as in many ways as a massage without you being touched, but letting the vibrations of sound do all the moving and, like just like waters, and if you're standing in the beach, it's just like that, like letting it massage and wash through you, wash over you. But I think that's the sound. It does go through the body, so it's not just water where it's just your skin, but it does go through you. And then, it's amazing when you can let yourself. I always say like come back to the whole idea of like plopping, right? The more safe you feel, the body is in a position and where like every part of you can just go into effortlessness, where you don't have to, the body is like, I don't have to do any work. So it's like, and I kind of bring this back to a massage. If you were to go get a massage and you're clenching when the person's working on you. They're like, you could just let go. Let me do the work for you. Like, and imagine you're trying to help the person giving you a massage you. You know, it's like, no, just let the person massage you. You know, so if you're fighting the massage, it's you're fighting the whole time. The more you can do nothing and just let the sound do the work, the sound will sweep and wash and rinse whatever, you know, that's, again, everything is like held in our body, held in our nerves. And it's just like, let it wash away whatever it's meant to be washed away that day.
Yeah.
And if there's space, once it's like the clutter is clear, then the sound gets to kind of circulate the spaciousness. So I always feel like the first half of a sound bath is the massage portion. It's the washing, sweeping through the body, sweeping through any heaviness, tightness, tension. And then the second half of the sound bath is when there's more space, it's to help circulate the space. That you know, the body's like, okay, I don't have to do anything. The body knows, like, I'm safe. I don't have to do anything. Circulation is happening, right? And then so the sound waves can just continue to expand on the spaciousness. So how I approach a sound bath when I play is also very much kind of in line with how I guide like a restorative practice. Like, so I think back to, again, there's a phrase that you can Google called the relaxation response. I forget the doctor's name. There's a book that he wrote called the relaxation response, in that the whole guiding someone from fight or flight to rest and digest. So it's from the sympathetic nervous system to the parasympathetic. So it's like, we can't drop in to rest and digest, right? Until the body feels safe. Because the whole time, if we're efforting, we're clenching, we're holding, we're still in a state where we're like, well, I got to bolt out of this room at any moment because who knows what's going to happen. I'm not really getting to receive the sound bath. I'm still like holding everything so that the person massaging me, I'm making it really hard to be worked on.
Yeah.
Right. So the more I'm like, again, cultivating ease, and the more I can let go into like, oh yeah, the ground, these pillows are holding me up, right? The more I can rest into, oh wow, these cushions are like, you know, Calgon taking me away, right? It's like, the more I can just like completely drape and melt into the ground. Like, I feel like the first few minutes, just like letting yourself, the more you can really take advantage of the sound. The sound, like the massage can happen, right?
Yeah.
And then how I approach a sound bath, again, is the first half, if let's say the sound bath is, let's say, 20 minutes. I approach the first 10 minutes as the cleansing. That's the washing, the cleaning, the sweeping, right? So then when I'm playing the gong, it would sound more like, it usually you kind of build up to like it gets kind of thunderous, I guess. I would use that word, like, and then you'll feel more like it swells, and it's like, think of big waves, right? Like in the ocean, like big waves, kind of like washing through you, but you're staying deep in the ground, so you're not getting pushed, you know, like you're not falling. You're still, you know, you're still there. So the sound is doing a lot of these big waves, and then it goes back down, and it goes up again, and it goes down. But the sound is very like reverberating. And so I would treat, like, let's say again, 20 minutes. The first 10 would be cleansing. The second half, so minute 10 to minute 15, this is when I start it gets slower and quieter. And then the last 5 minutes will be like what I would call boring. It would sound like a drone. Like, it would be not much stimulation at all. Because at that point, it's like, that's when the sound is just moving space, right? I don't want to stimulate anybody at that point, because then that means they have to, like, oh, I'm listening to music. Like, you know, like, no, I don't, just chill. You don't have to do anything. Right? The more they can stay, like, you know, like, they can just receive, but then there's nothing clanging or banging at the second half. It just sounds like they're floating, coasting. So think of like a flotation tank, right? Like, people, like, that's why, so they can just coast. And then so the waves like got like, you know, like as the wave has got their back, right? So like the sound just guides them and just does that without any kind of big ups and downs. It's just like, it's really just to kind of create balance. And then so during the second half, I try not to do a lot of loud, soft, loud. It's just pretty mellow the whole time. So then there's no big stimulation, because otherwise it might keep them up.
Yeah, it can be jolting.
Yeah.
So how'd you get into doing sound baths? Are you a musician?
I do play music, but that's not how I got into it, though. It's interesting. It's just very typical in a Kundalini context to have sound baths. So when I was doing teacher training, they didn't really teach us how to play a gong. It was like a really quick lesson on what to do and what not to do, how to play it, how not to play, and we just got to practice a little bit of it. And then I couldn't afford one at the time, but a friend, Lynn, had a gong, and she let me borrow it. And then I was practicing with it. And because I was using like a singing bowl, kind of doing the same thing, but just using a bowl. But kind of using the same principles of using the first, half of it to create more sound, to do the cleaning. And then the second part will be kind of slower, more droney. And then when I got to use her gong, I was like, wow, this is great. It does so much more and the sound just builds and builds and builds in the room. It fills the room, which is amazing. You could feel it's so visceral. Yeah. So, I do like, I think it's amazing. I think it's an amazing tool. And I think everyone should experience it at least once. I do too.
Yeah. No, I do too. Yeah. I love them.
Yeah.
Here's what happens to me though.
Yeah.
I fall asleep a lot.
It's great.
However, the preferred position to be in during a sound bath, I find, for me anyways, is laying on my back.
Yes.
I'll start to snore.
Great.
Well, Megan will wake me up. So I don't like going to sound baths with Megan because we'll be lying there. I'll start to snore. She'll start to elbow me. Yeah. And I get like upset. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, I'm totally enjoying my sound bath right now.
So you need to go to your room, your own room, and have your own space so you could really. And I find this, I actually feel that sleeping, when you drop into sleep, talk about full permission to feel safe.
Yeah.
Because again, if the body and the nervous system doesn't feel safe enough, it won't drop into sleep.
Yeah.
So that's a huge gift, like that your body's like, it's safe enough to sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's actually very true. It's like Shavasana.
Yeah.
That's like Shavasana. And you and I both open with Shavasana, which is interesting. But I talk about how Shavasana is the most vulnerable of positions.
It is.
Your eyes are closed. Yeah. All your vitals are exposed.
Yeah.
Palms are up. Yeah. Like you are exposed.
Yeah.
Sleep is the same. Yeah. Like I can't fall asleep if I'm not 100% comfortable.
Yeah.
I am that person.
Yeah.
Like I've been in places where I know that I'm like, I'm not going to be able to fall asleep here.
Yeah.
Like
totally.
That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
I don't feel safe.
Yeah.
Comfortable.
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen.
Not going to happen.
So if you fall asleep, if you take a sound bath and if you fall asleep, that's okay.
Yes.
Maybe even preferred.
Yes.
Even if you snore. Oh, amazing. So I have to sleep on my side. I have to lay on my side if I end up going to sound bath with Megan, because she gets embarrassed that I'm snoring.
Tell her it's a good thing.
I will. I tell her it's a good thing. And actually, the last time before we went to a sound bath, or actually we went to the sound bath, because at the studio that I'm currently teaching at, there's sound baths after both of my classes. So sometimes we'll stay for the sound bath. And I asked the teacher right in front of Megan, I'm like, hey, is it okay if I fall asleep in your sound bath? She's like, oh yeah, please do. I'm like, and I knew the answer. but I wanted Megan to hear it. I'm like, what happens if I snore? She's like, snore away. I just use it as another instrument in the sound bath.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, see, babe?
Yeah. The sound the snore adds to the sound of the room.
I've just created more vibration.
Exactly.
In a room filled with it.
Exactly.
So, Pete, where can people find you?
They can find me on my website, which I'm working. I haven't updated anything, but
What's the website?
it's the letter C, cpetelee.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
And where can people practice with you, or can they just get all of the information on cpetelee.com?
They can contact me and send me a message, and I'll add them to the email list for the yoga class. I'm only teaching Saturdays. It's 11 o'clock. It's by donation.
Okay.
Yeah. So
11 o'clock Saturdays.
Pacific time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're listening to this podcast and you want to practice with Pete, which I highly, highly recommend you do, go to cpetelee.com, because apparently his classes are invitation only. I love that. I love it.
No, donation.
But they have to contact you.
Yeah, true.
Yeah,
Right?
they have to contact you, and then you'll email them the link.
Yes.
That's amazing. I really like that, because it holds, what I like about that, and what I think a lot of the community lacks these days, is accountability. And it really, to do that, it means they want to be there.
Yeah.
And if it's donation, donation is such a gift. So first of all, if you're offered a donation class, that's a gift from the teacher. Yes, it's the monetary donation is so that the teacher feels that their time is valued, and they should be paid. This is the way that we currently exchange energy these days is through payment. And I'm a firm believer in it, which is why I think it's important with the accountability aspect of it, because there's free yoga classes out there, but if you pay just a little bit, you're accountable.
Yeah.
And then the teacher's accountable.
Yeah.
And, because I've had people ask me before if I would teach a free class. And I'm like, I can, but you probably won't like the class that I'll teach because I won't feel like I'm valued.
Yeah.
And then
the students won't feel won't feel that it's of value.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where I was getting at. If you contact Pete Lee at cpetelee.com, he'll email you, because that means you're holding his class of value.
Yeah, thank you.
Of course, and it is valuable. I think what you do is amazing, and I thank you for your work and for being the light of ease within this crazy community we call Los Angeles, because we could definitely use it. And I'm so honored to be a friend and a colleague, and I look forward to sharing more conversations, more tools, and more chocolate chip recipes.
Yes.
Chocolate chip cookies.
Totally.
To be specific.
Totally.
Okay.
Totally.
Thank you so much, Pete.
Thanks, Sean.
Yeah. Thanks. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.